You know what? I'm scared. And when I'm scared like this, I just allow myself to make videos and talk about what I feel because I am scared. I'm scared of this reality that I'm in. I'm scared not because something happens in it, I'm just in a room by myself. But I'm scared to see. I'm scared to see the things around me, man. I am scared. I don't know how to fully explain what I'm experiencing, but I'm scared. I look at a tiny nail in the wall in front of me. There is a wall in front of me, opposite to this one. So I look at that tiny nail in this wall, and I know that that tiny nail is alive. And I know that not only that it is alive, it's like something is looking at me. Something is looking at me through that nail. And then I look at everything else in the room and I feel the same sensation. And I now know that all these things in this room, they are freaking looking at me. And I know how schizophrenic this sounds. I know how paranoid this sounds. But I'm recounting an actual experience here. So, this is why I'm scared. I find myself, it's almost like all of a sudden you would find yourself in a completely alien world. Like, what the heck are these things? Even this thing on me. It's like oh my god, it's just like this sweater, or how do you call it in English? This thing is like a creature on its own, having a sort of life on its own. But it's so mind bending because it doesn't move. It's inanimate theoretically. It's just a sweater which hangs here on my body. How can this be a creature? But I'm telling you, this is a creature. It has life of its own. I don't know, and not only life like that, because it's almost like, imagine this. Imagine that somehow around it, around the sweater, okay, there is this invisible layer around it, and in this, let's say, there would be this invisible layer around it, right? There would be like that, kind of like this, a layer all around it, and in that layer, in that invisible layer, this thing is a being of its own. It has experiences. It has a life of its own. Maybe it has, there are things happening there in that invisible realm. It's almost like this thing, when I say it is a being of its own, on its own, it's like an actual, like it would be a human being. And to us here, it looks like a sweater, but in this invisible layer, it's actually, maybe it's a human being and it has a family and it does stuff. It has a life of its own. When I say it has a life of its own, I don't mean like, you know how they say in this animism type of philosophies, animism, they say that, oh, everything is alive. But what I'm saying, it's like, not that it has life of its own, like everything would be like a, living magical thing. What I'm sensing is that this sweater appears like a sweater to us here, but let's say, in other words, it would be like in another realm, this sweater is a being, an actual human being, let's say, with a family and things like this. And the way I behave with my sweater here in this reality affects the life of that human being in that reality there. That's what I'm getting to. And what I also feel is almost like that universe in which this sweater lives like a human being with a family and a city and whatever, that entire universe, or let's say realm, is contained somewhere, if I feel it correctly, is somewhere around this sweater. It's almost like there will be a thick layer here, invisible layer, and in this in this space here around it, all over it, there would be all these worlds created with all of its scenarios and everything that it is going through and everything that is everything that it lives. It lives there because it might have multiple lives and multiple ways of. There might be multiple worlds, but everything is contained here in this layer around it, and it goes on through so many things. This sweater on me, and I have many others. Look, and then there are the objects, and everything is like this. And they are not conscious of us. Like I don't think I don't think the being, which here looks like my sweater, is conscious of me. And so I think some of them, sometimes they become conscious of the other levels of themselves. Who knows, maybe in another reality I can be the sweater of somebody. Maybe in another reality I can be its shoes or a piece of music. Right? I know it sounds very mind-bending and even hilarious or schizophrenic or amusing, but you know, I don't know. I'm just recounting my true actual experience. I know it sounds like coming from a delirious person right now, but what can I do? These are the effects of, let's say, quote unquote, awakening, right? Make sure you truly want it. But to get a bit serious, to get back to more seriousness, let's say, it's actually a true experience what I'm experiencing. And then you realize that everything is alive, but in this way that I just described it. And then you realize, like, well, you're freaking kind of affecting so many things, so many lives of so many people, let's say, by just the way you behave with your own objects in your house. Like, you can truly influence the life of other beings by how you behave with the objects in your house. And now it's like I look at the walls and I feel like crying. I don't know how to explain what I'm perceiving even more than what I've just described. Because, there is so much, by the way. There's so much when you start seeing things for real. And by the way, I have to add this in that this is the heart perception. This is not the third eye or whatever. Or maybe, who knows? They might even be the same at some point. But this is the heart perception. When you start seeing things this way, there's so much in everything that you are looking at that it can't be described with words anymore. Because there's not only one explanation for a certain thing existing. There is not only one way to describe it. There are so many ways melting into that specific things. So many ways to describe its existence. So many things melting into one. So what do I do? Because now I see everything in my room and I see it's almost like it's incredibly intelligent design. It's almost like everything is exactly placed exactly where it has to be. Each crack in the wall, each speck of dust, there's some stains on that other wall there from where when it rained inside the house, because it rained inside this house at some point. It like the roof is not fully all right, and when it rains, it sometimes rains inside the house as well, and it rained at some point and it stained the wall, that other wall here, and it has these drips on it. And I look at them and it's just like it's almost like the work of art of an artist. It's almost like somebody painted them there with intent. I'm not saying they are beautiful, they are ugly, and the ugliness is still ugly, but it's like I can see the intention. I perceive the intention. It's almost like, and the intention is not the intention behind it. I mean, I perceive the intention behind it. It's placed there intentfully. It's everything is designed. That's what I'm saying. That every single thing that happens to you is purely 100% design with purpose to happen in exactly that way. But not that's far from saying it's all right the way it is. Sometimes bad things are created with purpose so that you see that they are bad and you do something about them. I'm far from saying that if it is created with purpose, you should just accept it the way it is. But I'm just saying that it is created with pure intent right now. And it feels like when I look at these stains, these drips, of previous rain, continuing to appear here on this wall, left their marks on this wall. When I look at these stains on the wall, it's almost like right now I can feel in this moment how these very stains on that wall are held into existence by an intelligence, by an intent, which is doing them right now. Right as I look at them, it creates them and it holds them in existence, the stains on the wall, just like that, just now. So the intent happens now. It is the artist, let's say, which paints this world, is doing it now. And it's the same with everything else. God, it's so scary. Because I can feel, at the same time, I look at an object and I can feel how that object is, I don't know how to explain it, not necessarily looking at me, but it's like not the object, it's not the object which is looking at me. It's like something else is looking at me through the object. And I can feel the sentience, the sentient, sentientness. Is this a word? You know, the quality of being sentient in the objects. There is this sentient thing which is perceiving or looking at me through everything around me. It's like, what do you do when you feel so seen or observed or whatever this is? Am I seen or am I observed by this thing? Because to see me, to feel seen, I don't feel seen by this thing. Now I realize I feel, oh, I feel seen, but not. More like observed rather than seen, but seen at the same time somehow. Oh, anyway, I know how deeply schizophrenic all of this sounds. I know. But what do you do when the heart perception truly starts deepening? And the thing is that I can control the process. Like I can go back into forgetfulness if I need. I can obstruct this if I need to a degree. I can go back into the mind. I can control the process if it gets too scary. And I think this is the difference between a schizophrenic and a being which does this process of in a controlled, let's say, and willful and through its own effort. Because if you do this process of, you know, seeing with your heart and you do it through your own effort, you also gain and you earn the skill to be able to understand what it is and how to truly control the process. Whereas for a schizophrenic or for people which take different types of hallucinatory drugs, they are just raptured in the experience, but they can't control the experience. Whereas for the ones among us which are doing the true work, we grow the muscles and we earn the skills to be able to use this perception like a tool of sorts that you can like a tool that you can truly control it, like you would have a sword and you know how to use the sword because you've earned that through your own effort, through your own skill and power and dedication and commitment, through all the sweat and blood that you've been putting into this process, made you eventually and ultimately earn the muscles enough to hold the sword of this heart awareness and be able to, what's the word when you, there's a word for that, when you do with the sword, wield it or something like this. So I can control the process, but if I allow myself to, stop controlling it, and I just let it go in a way, it gets really deep and it gets really real and it gets really scary. It's almost like there's memory in everything. Every object contains an incomprehensible amount of memory and knowledge. It is like it is a bank of knowledge. You don't need books. You just need the heart awareness and go in the world. And start from nature, by the way. Go in nature with your heart awareness, and you won't. It's just like you could spend lifetimes learning. And there's knowledge in everything, in the objects around us, in my sweater. All this, like this sweater, this is another dimension of the same sweater, okay? So I told you that this sweater is alive and has a life of its own, is a being of its own, let's say, with family, with events, with happening to them, but existing in another dimension that we cannot see. And the way I behave with my sweater here affects the life of that being in that dimension. And I see that dimension and that universe is around the sweater somehow. That's one thing about the sweater. That's another thing about the sweater, is that from a different perspective, this sweater is a storehouse of knowledge and information. This is memory. This is pure memory all over it, in it, as it. And just if I stay with the sweater with my heart awareness and I look at the sweater with my heart, I am being told things and remembered things. I remember. I understand the laws of the universe. I can learn everything from this sweater, basically. I'm telling you, this is far from being a joke. I know how amusing this might sound, okay? But I can learn everything about the universe from this sweater. I don't need teachers. I don't need books. I don't need anything else than this sweater. I can learn everything from this sweater if I stay enough with my heart in the sweater and I look at the sweater with my heart. It can teach me so much of the history of the universe. It can teach me about so many events that happened. It's everything is here in its colors, in its texture, in its why it is the way it is, in what wool is. Let's say it's made out of wool, this particular sweater. Let's say, what is wool and how wool came into existence, and wool has its own history, and why there are ships, and what are ships, and ships have their own history, and then they are part of the animal kingdom, and the animal kingdom has its own history, and animals are part of the earth, and the earth has its own history. And if we would think that the earth maybe is part of the cosmos, then the cosmos has its own history. So see, it's like everything is interconnected, and just from learning, just looking at a sweater, you can understand everything. Just stay with the sweater and learn from the sweater. But see, there are natural and unnatural things, because if I would have a polyester sweater on me, I could learn a lot from that polyester sweater, but I would learn about unnaturality and artificiality and how that works, the disease that has plagued the cosmos, its history, when it began, what it has done. I could learn a lot about artificiality just by interacting with a polyester sweater. But the key here is, like, you can access all this knowledge through your heart. If you interact with the world around you through the heart, that's the zero dimension, that's the alpha and omega, that's the beginning and the end, that's everything you need, that's the ground of all existence. It's the heart. See, the mind has simulated the heart, and the mind can get you to some forms of knowledge. And if you, let's say, take some drugs or do some meditations or whatever, you can access higher states of consciousness, mental consciousness. But they even those higher states, if you only work through the mind and you don't access the heart at all, they are gonna be limited. They like the mind is never going to be able to do what the heart does. Period. Because the mind is just such a limited device. The heart is the all. The heart is the whole. Basically, you can understand the whole through the heart, but never would you be able to do that through the mind. Ever. So to get back to my original point with this recording, like, what the heck do I do now? Because it feels scary and I have no teachers. I haven't yet found my teachers, and I need my teachers. I need my people. I need my guides. Like, how the heck do I navigate this world now? It's freaking scary. To access the heart doesn't mean it's all like rainbows and butterflies. There are really scary things happening. How do I live my life from now? What do I do with this? Where are my teachers? Where are my guides? I need you. I need you with my entirety. I'm ready to meet with you. I need you. I need you guys. I need you by my side. Please come. And I need my true partner. I need to be with him. I can only do this with him.